So welcome everyone to our reading tonight. This is, I believe, our fifth installment of BunkerLit, which is a series Brendan and I created with the idea of sort of infusing our weekly routine, which sort of lacks a routine right now, with a little bit of art. So the idea of the reading is that anybody can kind of tune in from wherever they are, their bunker, so to say, and just kind of experience 15 or so minutes of a writer. We try to vary every week who we have on. Brendan's going to handle our introduction. So we're really excited about that. So the idea is 15 or so minutes of a reading, and then we have a Q&A with the author, and then we close out usually by 8:30. So the idea is it's kind of quick, it's simple, it's not a huge commitment, but it gets that creativity into our lives and into our weeks. The only rule, so to say, is just for the sake and smoothness of the reading, we ask that you mute your mic now, if you would, just so that if you jostle or sneeze, it doesn't interrupt the reading for everyone. And then as soon as the reading's done, you can unmute it and we can have a little conversation with any questions that you might have. So I think that's it. I'll turn it over to Brendan for our introduction. Thanks, everybody.
Cool. Thank you, Amy. And thank you guys so much for joining us. Yeah, this is our fifth BunkerLit. And we are super psyched to have Debbie Moderow on with us tonight. She is the author of Fast Into the Night, A Woman, Her Dogs, and Their Journey North on the Iditarod Trail. And the book tells the story of her running that famous sled dog race, and then also examines in great depth her relationship with her huskies, which is super interesting. Also interesting is that our books both came out from Houghton Mifflin Harcourt at almost the same time. So the first time Deb and I met was actually in a cage, like a cage fight to try and get promotional dollars for our books. And it was very intense, but I had the great pleasure of staying with Debbie in Anchorage. She kindly put me up when I came up there to read. She is such a pleasure to hang out with, a fan of sushi. She's wildly smart. She has an undergraduate degree from Princeton. She has an MFA in creative writing from Pacific Lutheran. She has a daughter who is a published children's author. She and her husband Mark split their time between Anchorage and Denali Park with their dogs. She's super kind, super funny, and I'm so glad to have her here tonight.
Thanks, Brendan. I didn't feel like we were really in a cage in a fight. I think you might have won.
I don't know about that.
Anyway, what an honor to do this. I must say I never dreamt I would be asked to do a reading on the theme of isolation and loneliness, even though there is that component in my story. You know, to read during a pandemic, who would have thought? So I don't usually read this passage. I need to give you a little bit of background. My memoir is set between my two attempts to finish the 1,100-mile Iditarod Trail sled dog race. I made these attempts in 2003 and 2005 after 15 years of developing a family kennel. My little son and daughter, Andy and Hannah, grew up with one sled dog, then 2, 3, 4. They began racing before I did. They ran further than Mark and I ever did in the beginning. And when they left for college, there were 20 dogs in the backyard. And Andy had finished the Iditarod at that point. Under the finish line arch, he had said, "Mom, you have to do this." And so I decided right then and there, this was a great assault on the empty nest that I was dreading. So we have a small backyard kennel. You need to know that. My 2003 race ended prematurely, 880 miles or 12 days into the race on the ice of the Bering Sea, in between two checkpoints, Shaktoolik and Koyuk. There I was in a shelter cabin at a place called Island Point. So I'm going to read that scene to you now, and then I have to redeem myself a little, and at the end I'm going to read a very short snippet about the successful ending to my second attempt in 2005. So here we are, stopped on the sea ice. My 9 dogs sleep in the lee of a plywood shack. I sit on top of my sled and watch them, curled in tight nose-to-tail balls atop dead grasses that poke through wind-scoured snow. They look almost content, snuggled 2 by 2 in their crimson jackets, like resting here might be part of our plan. But my dogs know better, and so do I. The truth of our trouble rushes at me, and I swivel in place, turning my back to the wind. The door of the shelter cabin rattles. For a moment, the air quiets, like it's taking a breath. Then a new gust wails. Tyga startles awake at the crescendo. Lifting her soft red head, she squints and flattens her ears. She looks past me with empty amber eyes. I follow her gaze to the barren landscape we've traveled. There's nothing but white. No trees, just an empty expanse with a faint line of a trail and a few wooden markers that vanish into the haze. This is not any kind of haze I've seen before. It's different from the ice fog that settles in our valley at home in Denali on the coldest winter days, or the mist in August that curls in and around the gangly black spruce and eventually lifts to reveal sun-soaked mountains. This is an evil hoodwink haze. The air moves so steadily it tricks the eye and appears still. Snow crystals race above ground, suspended in an incessant Bering Sea wind. In one more effort to take charge, I stand to get moving. My hamstrings ache and my frost-nipped chin stings against my frozen neck gaiter. So I rotate it, which helps my chin, but now water drips down the back of my neck. I tighten the strings of my Wolverine ruff and burrow into its dry warmth. Thank God for the Wolverine. Maybe now I can think straight and come up with a plan. I tell myself, look ahead, look to Koyak. With self-imposed wisdom, I stumble past my dog team, 10 paces into the gale. It's not easy to see the outgoing trail. There's white ice and an occasional stripe of snow. A marker pitches toward ground, and a piece of driftwood lies at my feet. When I pick it up, its splintered surface sticks to my woolen gloves. I touch it with my tongue, and sure enough, taste salt, proof of the sea. It's nice to be certain of something. This place is so locked in winter, I can't tell where the land ends and the ocean begins. This knob of a hill must be Island Point. From what the checker in Shaktoolik said, we're only 30 miles from Koyak. To be stopped here is nothing but wrong. Never mind, Debbie, take care of yourself so you can help them. So many people have told me this. It's been hours since my breakfast in Shaktoolik, so I fumble in my pocket for a granola bar. It's frozen solid. The last thing I need is a broken tooth, so I stuff it into my armpit to thaw. Then I stumble to the cabin's broken door and hip check it open. The inside of the shack is musty and cold. I'm thinking I should be outside with the dogs in the weather, but for a moment, the cabin walls hold me. I search the stale space for something good. A piece of rotting plywood serves as a tabletop. There's a bench and an old barrel stove. Its rusted door creaks when I pry it open. There are wads of used toilet paper inside. I wonder if that driftwood will burn. The contents of a crushed packet of top ramen are strewn over the table, wormy fragments mixed with old gum wrappers and a cigarette butt. Amid the noodles stands a chipped olive green candle, its wax splattered on the table's gritty surface. Obscene graffiti is etched into splintered plywood walls, voices of strangers who have been here before me. This cabin offers me nothing. Admittedly, there's a feeble potential for a fire, but I can survive without it. The cracked gray windows obscure any view. The damp, stagnant air makes me shiver. Despite my lips of cardboard and a sour taste in my mouth, I gnaw on the peanut butter granola bar, thinking of the emergency freeze-dried food in my sled and my small bottle of trail mix. I do have 3 meals for the dogs along. That gives us some time. Satisfied that we have enough provisions for now, I sit on the bench, prop my elbows on the table, and rest my face in my hands. For the first time, I contend with a question that will consume me for years. What has gone wrong? I don't yet understand. There will never be an answer. Surely, now, by identifying the source of our trouble, I can fix it, change the outcome. Of course, there's a riddle to solve. As I sit at that grimy table, I'm telling myself I've never been a musher who pushes too hard. From the conception of my Iditarod dream, my only goal has been to finish the race with healthy, happy dogs. At one checkpoint after another, we've rested longer than other teams. The vets all say my dogs are strong and happy. Of course, 11 days on the trail have worn us all down, but my huskies are eating and resting. Have the vets been mistaken? What have I missed? A gust wails, releasing my tears. I taste salt again, this time my own. The bench against the wall invites sleep. So fully clothed for the trail, boots and all, I lie on its hard surface. My eyes close. The storm teases and whistles, and images from the day will not leave me alone. Kanga pulling back and sitting down on the snow. Roulette circling to lie down. Spot hanging his head. Oh, Kanga. Sleep comes. One bark, then several more cut into the thrum of the wind. I jump to my feet and search for my headlamp. It could not be any darker in here. After fumbling around, I find it on the wooden platform. Then I try to open the door, which is jammed shut. I kick it open, and at last I'm outside in time to see the silhouette of a dog team coming our way. Disgusted to have fallen asleep, I fight for focus. I should have made everything ready in case a dog team passed. Now I am one big mess. My mittens are indoors along with the dog food cooler. The gang line is tangled because my huskies are now sleeping in one big pile. I cannot fix anything fast enough. My swollen fingers are too slow. This opportunity to follow another team might solve our problem. Hurry, Debbie, you can do it. I'm talking myself up, knowing this might be our big chance. Wake up, everybody. I clap my hands to rouse the dogs, then rush inside to collect my gear. The team trots up the bluff while I'm frantically stuffing things into my sled bag. Creek and Nacho leap to their feet. Little Sue woofs, and so does Spot. They bark the voice of hope. Who's there, I ask. We all wear so many layers of clothing, it's difficult to recognize other mushers. What the hell are you doing here, Debbie? This is one nasty Spot. Russ's friendly drawl is unmistakable. He and I traveled near each other at the beginning of the Yukon, and more than once he complimented me on my spunky team. His is a motley crew compared with mine. They're laid back and travel more slowly than my racy bunch, but they look like Olympians right now. Russ gets off his runners and talks to his dogs. Y'all stay now, he tells them. Don't get no ideas. He walks alongside my sled, shining his light on my mutinous bunch. I'll be damned, Debbie. Just look at him. His voice is low. I can't believe your dogs are doing this. Mine have been acting up the entire race. This should be my team, not yours. He offers me a sympathetic shake of his head. I tell him they never ran well leaving Shaktoolik, and that all I can figure is that the wind and the white spooked them. Or something about being on the trail for so long has sapped their spirit. Then I ask if he'd mind if we chase. No problem, he sounds upbeat. I'll pull ahead. Your team has been awesome till now. Straighten them out, we'll go together. He moves his team 20 yards forward. Now I'm awash with nerves, frantic to capitalize on this opportunity. My heart pounds a drumbeat of expectation that Kanga and Little Sue, my leaders, are renewed from their rest. I'm fumbling in darkness. Everything moves in slow motion. My head hurts, my lips throb. I grab the gang line and behind leaders Kanga and Little Sue and pull the whole line away from the cabin. Roulette and Strider will not stand. They are ragdolls in the wind. Piney and Teton huddle. Little Sue stands like a statue out front, facing into the gale. Kanga sits next to her and then darts behind, pulling the whole line with her back to the cabin. No, Kanga, damn it, no. I grab her collar and move her out once again. Stay. Now I'm yelling. She's not used to that. She cowers. I switch her into wheel and move Tyga up to lead with little Sue. Kanga curls in a defiant knot, as do Roulette and Strider. Spot stands looking dazed. Nacho pees on Piney. Piney doesn't even mind. Despite the dog's body language, I know they can do it. I scold them, telling them to stand up and get ready. Then I sprint to my sled and give Russ a thumbs up, convinced we'll follow. They might move slowly at first, but of course they'll get going. Never before this day have they ever turned me down. Hike, I call in a loud ringing tone. Russ speaks to his dogs and they move steadily ahead. In unison, mine lie down. Russ runs back and I meet him at my leader's. Try it again, Debbie. I can wait, he says. This time I pat Tyga and little Sue to give them some encouragement. Then I switch a few others and I plead with Kanga. It's a charade of desperation. Momentum does not come. This time I walk to Russ. You go, I tell him, explaining I don't want to give his gang any bad ideas. I've heard of circumstances where one team influences the other. It's horrifying enough my dogs are stopped. I cannot bear the thought of poisoning Russ's team. Are you sure, Debbie? I can't believe this. Russ sounds so sad. I'll try anything. Then he shakes his head. Damn dogs, he says with a loving, gentle laugh. I nod. A squall whips into a funnel alongside us, and when Russ looks ahead, his light illuminates dogs, everyone on their feet. He speaks in a low, quiet tone. Let's go. They move ahead into the night. Mine relocate to the lee of the shack and are soon asleep. Spent from the effort, I walk inside and lie on the bench. Now I've scolded my dogs, been hard on them when they're already down, snuffed out the last remnants of their trust. For a moment I long for Sydney and Juliet, leaders I've left behind. Then I'm glad they've missed seeing me at my worst. It feels lonely and wrong to be indoors by myself. So I go out and get Kanga. She won't stand, so I pick her up, carry her in, and put her on the bench alongside me. I curl up like a fetus alongside my veteran leader. Kanga shivers, her teeth chatter on every exhale, which brings on my own trembling. 1 minute I'm praying my dogs and I will run again. Then I'm wondering if prayers ever matter. I consider the possibility that this journey has been jinxed from the start. Those endless months of warm and dry weather making training miserable, the snowless winter, a season so mild that rivers in South Central never froze. Maybe these were signals it was not our time. No, that cannot be. We persevered, and despite the conditions, we logged far more training miles than other rookies. When our son Andy handed me this legacy 2 years ago, his message was clear. From his spectacular Iditarod success came the spark for my own adventure. It's not like these Huskies have ever refused to run. They're born with desire for the trail, but not now. After traveling some 800 miles, we're stopped less than 200 from Nome, where my family is waiting. Mark, Hannah, and Andy believe in us. Our run is also theirs. Just last night, on the phone from Shack Tulik, we talked about our upcoming reunion under the Burled Arch. That was the first time I dared speak of a finish. I can't believe we're almost there, I said to Hannah. Now I see it clearly, my happy dogs charging down Front Street, bright-eyed and eager, the kids waiting at the finish line with wreaths of yellow roses for Kanga and little Sue, just like the flowers awarded to the champion's lead dogs. Good girls, Hannah will say, good dogs, I knew you could do it. Mom, they look so good, you did it. Andy, wearing his Iditarod finisher's belt buckle, will beam. Hey, Mom, some storm out of Caltag. I was a little worried there. So cool you got through it. Then he'll add, you know, now that you've finished Iditarod, you're a real musher like I am. Then Mark will take me in his arms and hold me. He'll speak and his voice will crack. I told you you could do it, he will say. Oh, I feel it now. That was the end of my 2003 attempt at the Iditarod. I did get to the finish line in 2005, 2 years later. The run was messy. The struggle on the sea ice was real. It took me, I think, 3 days to get from Koyak to Nome, or 4 even. I'd had a great run until then, but when my dogs got on the sea ice, it started happening all over again. Here's what it felt like on Front Street. Straight ahead, Juliet, straight ahead, Sydney, I call. Good girl, Spur. Good boy, Reno. I call each dog by name. They bound over a dwindling ribbon of snow down Front Street of Nome. Together we move past legendary bars and clapboard houses built during the gold rush. My dogs run where huskies of history have carried mail and serum and desperately needed supplies to this Arctic community isolated in winter. This mile brings back all the others. My own history overtakes me. Salt, our first dog, and I are slipping through spruce trees in moonlight above Anchorage in 4 inches of fresh snow. That moment blends into another. I'm with Hannah and Salt as they complete their first 1-dog race. Then I'm crossing the 2-dog finish line with Andy, Moxie, and Morgan. Now we're cruising down the street of Andy's Iditarod triumph. The past inspires and informs. It's always with us, but to look down Front Street from the runners of my dog sled is a sight that has everything yet nothing to do with what has come before. This moment is the culmination of a 2,000-mile double adventure, the messy beauty of its struggle, the ultimate surrender to the fact that some endings are happy and others are not. Now, the Burled Arch, I see it. It's 1 short block away.
Debbie, that was fantastic. I'm glad that you added that burst at the end. That is really lovely.
Well, it came to mind a little bit in the last few weeks that we do take our history with us. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I think we're all individually drawing on wherever we've been right now. So it was a healthy exercise for me to go back to the shelter cabin in the last few weeks when I was thinking about reading that chapter.
I can imagine. That was absolutely wonderful. Thank you.
You bet. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah. So everyone, if you want to unmute your mics and ask any questions, there's also a chat box if you want to type your question. Yeah.
I hope that wasn't a big downer.
I'm glad too you read that last part. It was redemptive for sure. I remember actually it's that one section out on the sea ice is one of those sections you remember where you were when you were reading it. I remember where I was when I was reading that at the Larkspur in Sitka. It's like it kind of imprints itself. I'm curious, I guess just in the current moment, how often you find yourself going back to different points, you know, in the race. And, you know, we were talking about how it's difficult right now, you know, on a lot of levels, like being a grandma and such, and how much like the physical trials of the race are able to kind of buoy you up in tough kind of interpersonal moments.
Well, I think the real gift of finally reaching the finish line was to have the perspective to look back clearly, because when that monkey was still on my back and I hadn't finished Iditarod, that was a tormenting feeling. I was very determined, but I was surprised when I got there because the joy of it wasn't the triumph of doing it. That really wasn't. It took me writing the book to figure out that the real gift of that finish line was to look back and see that the real lessons, the real lasting benefits of going through those 2,000 miles of struggle happened in the fairly raggedy moments, you know, and that you got to keep your eye on the distant horizon and maybe squint your eyes a little and not look at exactly that monster lurking around the next bend, you know. And until I finished the race, every time the dogs got on the sea ice, they sat down, and I went through this all over again. Right. so when I start getting really anxious right now, I think about how I had to pull out a few tricks that I didn't know the first time. And one was a sense of humor. Another one was um, just try to tell a different story in my head. Yes, they will go again, damn it. They don't hate this. They're phobic of something, or something is repeated. But when they ran beautifully, happy and strong. And then they get on the ice and they go, oh. So their anxiety, you know, was shutting them down. And I don't know where it started. I still don't know. Of course, their anxiety made me anxious, you know, but I think we're all trying to keep a level keel now, trying to maintain our momentum despite the horrors of the world. I'm very worried about climate change. I'm working on new writing about my relationship to landscape and how it, in the context of change, and that being the ultimate change we're facing. And so I draw on my Iditarod experience a lot.
Yeah, thank you.
Anything else?
This is Nancy. Since you just mentioned what you're working on now, would you say a little more about what you're thinking about, you know, maybe not what you're writing, but what you're thinking about landscape, and if you're thinking about it differently now than, you know, 6 months ago?
Well, it was sort of like that shelter cabin scene. You know, it's spectacularly beautiful on the Bering Sea coast. And I really do love that country. And when this outbreak just started here in Denali Park, there have been some people that thought they were infected. And I would look out at this landscape and think, how can this place where the songbirds are returning, you know, have my neighbor on her back right now? And I'm worried about her. And how can such a horror be happening? And yet, if I go out into that landscape, I get renewed, you know, and I know that most of us do that live up here. I'm writing about several changes that have come with aging and how the landscape has drawn me through them. One was the loss of my brother. Another, of course, there are dogs in this book as well, and dogs aging out, and my own aging and changing where we live and how we live and what we're looking for. So the landscape is my handhold, but the landscape is changing literally beneath our feet. And I don't think it's wrong to mention that, you know, the coronavirus will eventually pass, and the next big freight train coming at us is climate change. And it's well underway, and we all know it. And wrapping my head around that is daunting.
Thank you.
Deb,
Chat
looks
box.
like, yeah, there's a comment maybe we can end with, Deb.
Okay.
It's actually from my mother.
I was gonna read it, but I figured, Brendan, you'd like to introduce it.
No.
It's a good one. It's a question I was thinking about too as a dog person.
Any opportunity to get a word in with my mother, I will take advantage of. It says, first, thanks so much. Would you please speak about your dogs and trust?
See, that's why I never read that section. I'm so glad you asked that, because the 880 miles before and the 100-some pages before are really only about my dogs and trust. And they're the only reason we go out on these journeys. That bond between the dog and Musher is the sustenance on that trail. And the high points, there's nothing like it. When a new young leader gets you over the Alaska range and you're clinging on for dear life, you know, on the handlebars of your sled, and that dog that you've raised from birth, for the first time ever as a 2-year-old, is the one you have to go to because your veteran leader isn't going to do it. That was the heart of my loneliness out there, to lose my connection with my dogs, for them to basically say no. I think I could have had a broken limb and the bone sticking out, and it wouldn't have been as painful for me as knowing that the bond between me and my dogs had been, for the moment, severed. I did take the same dogs on the next run. I was advised by most mushers not to think of such a thing. And of course it started again. But I did manage to outfox them. Or out with them or something. But the relationship, I mean, the only reason we do this is because of love of our dogs. We've never had a big kennel. Our children, I jokingly say that the dogs raised all of us together. We still have 19 dogs. My biggest pride of this winter is that 8 of them are between 12 and 15, and they all ran this winter, barking, chewing on the line, having a great old time. They didn't go fast, but every single dog in our kennel ran. Those elders ran like there's no tomorrow. And they're all Kanga and Sydney's pups, pretty much. So
that's wonderful. Deb, thank you so much for joining us. This was really, really lovely, and just really, you know, you said, I hope it's not too, you know, much of a downer, but I find this reading to really kind of give me a sense of hope. And it was just really beautiful, and such an honor to hear from you and to connect with you. And thank you everybody for joining us. This has been a really lovely event.
well, thanks to you. It's been an honor to be on BunkerLit. And anything I can do to help with future events, I'd be delighted to.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank
Yeah, just get the good word out. Yeah, every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Alaska time.
All right. Thanks, you all. Thank you for coming, taking a half an hour.
Thank you. Everyone stay safe, and we'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye.